Candlelight Adventures. The Roadside Rescue. Chapter 1: The Disappearance. The village of Willowbrook lay nestled in the rolling hills, its quaint cottages and cobblestone streets bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered when a breathless messenger burst into the local tavern, where a group of adventurers had just settled in for a well-deserved rest. Eric Stonefist, his battle-scarred armor clinking with every movement, looked up from his tankard. "What's this commotion about?" he asked, eyeing the panicked messenger. The young man, his face pale and sweat-slicked, gulped for breath before speaking. "A woman has gone missing. Her name is Alara. She was traveling back from the market when she was taken from the road." Lyra Windrider, her keen elven eyes narrowing in concern, set aside her bow and approached the messenger. "Tell us more. When did this happen? Did you see anything?" The messenger nodded vigorously. "It was just afternoon. Her cart was found abandoned on the road, and there were signs of a struggle. I fear the worst. The villagers are desperate and don't know where to turn." Ira Moonshadow, her fingers absently tracing the intricate patterns on her spellbook, looked up with a frown. "This sounds like more than a simple robbery. We should offer our help. It might be connected to something more sinister." Borin Ironheart, seated at the back of the room, offered a solemn nod. "I agree. If someone or something took her, they may have intended harm. We should act quickly to find her." The adventurers gathered their gear and made their way to the scene of the disappearance. The road outside Willowbrook was lined with tall trees and thick underbrush, casting long shadows as the sun began to set. The abandoned cart was easy to spot, its wooden wheels caked with mud and its contents scattered across the dirt. The group began their investigation, carefully examining the area for any signs of what had transpired. Lyra crouched beside the cart, her sharp eyes scanning the ground. "These tracks are fresh," she said, pointing to a series of footprints leading into the dense forest. "And they're not alone. There's something else here, another set of tracks." Eric grunted in agreement, his hands brushing away some of the debris. "Looks like we have a trail to follow. Let's see where it leads." As the adventurers ventured into the forest, the light dwindled, casting eerie shadows through the trees. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. The tracks led deeper into the woods, winding around trees and over streams. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the forest cloaked in twilight. The adventurers pressed on, determined to find Alara before nightfall. The path grew more treacherous, and the forest seemed to close in around them. Ira raised her hand, casting a small orb of light to illuminate their path. "Keep your eyes and ears open. We don't know what might be waiting for us in these woods." Borin offered a reassuring smile. "Stay close. We'll find her." The group continued through the darkening forest, their resolve firm despite the growing darkness. Little did they know, the path they were on would lead them into far greater danger than they could have anticipated. Chapter 2: The Investigation. The forest grew darker with each passing minute, the dense canopy of trees blocking out the last rays of the setting sun. The adventurers moved cautiously through the underbrush, their senses heightened and their eyes scanning for any sign of Alara or her captors. Lyra Windrider, leading the way, paused to examine a broken branch. "This was recently disturbed," she noted, brushing the foliage aside. "We're on the right track." Eric Stonefist grunted in agreement. "Let's keep moving. We need to find out where those tracks lead before it gets too dark." The path they followed twisted and turned, the trees seeming to close in around them. The only sounds were the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional distant call of a night creature. Ira Moonshadow kept her magical light orb close, its soft glow providing a small circle of illumination in the encroaching gloom. As they ventured deeper, Borin Ironheart noticed something peculiar. "There's something odd about these tracks," he said, pointing to a set of footprints that seemed to appear and disappear sporadically. "They don't look like normal human tracks." Thorn Blackwood, who had been scouting ahead, returned with a thoughtful expression. "I found something," he said, holding up a small, blood-stained cloth. It's part of a scarf or something similar. Might belong to Alara. Lyra took the cloth and examined it closely. This could be important. Let's keep moving. The adventurers followed the trail to a small clearing where they found remnants of a recent campsite. A few smoldering embers of a fire were still faintly glowing, and the area was littered with scraps of food and discarded items. Ira knelt by the fire and cast a spell to detect magical auras. "There's a faint trace of magic here," she said. "It's not strong, but it's definitely unusual. This could be a clue." Eric scanned the surroundings with a critical eye. If they were using magic, they might be hiding something nearby. We should search the area thoroughly. The group spread out, carefully examining the clearing. Thorn discovered a partially hidden trapdoor beneath a pile of leaves. "This wasn't here by accident," he said, pulling away the foliage to reveal a set of iron-bound stairs leading underground. Ira's light orb revealed the dark opening, and the party prepared to descend. "Be ready for anything," she advised. "We don't know what awaits us below." One by one, they descended into the darkness. The air was cooler and musty, and the narrow staircase led them into a dimly lit underground chamber. The walls were rough-hewn stone, and the flickering light from their torches revealed strange symbols etched into the walls. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she examined the symbols. "These runes look like they're used for warding or protection. We might be dealing with someone who knows magic." Eric gripped his battle axe tightly. "Let's stay alert. We're not alone down here." The chamber opened into a larger cavern, filled with crates, barrels, and various supplies. In the center of the room was a makeshift table covered with maps and notes. A faint, eerie glow emanated from a corner of the room, where a strange ritual circle was inscribed on the floor. Boren approached the ritual circle with concern. "This looks like it was used for some kind of dark magic. We need to be careful." As the adventurers examined the cavern, a sudden noise made them jump. A series of whispers filled the air, and shadowy figures began to materialize from the darkness. The group readied their weapons, preparing for a confrontation. The figures, revealed to be a band of ruffians, emerged from the shadows, their eyes glinting with malice. "Looks like we've got company," Thorn said, drawing his daggers. The ruffians advanced. Their leader, a tall, gaunt figure clad in dark robes, stepped forward with a sinister grin. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed. "This is where your search ends." The adventurers braced themselves for battle, their resolve unshaken. The fight for Alara's rescue was only just beginning, and the true danger was yet to be revealed. Chapter 3: The Trail. The cavern's dim light flickered as the adventurers faced off against the ruffians. The leader's dark robe swirled around him as he gestured menacingly, his eyes glowing with dark magic. The tension in the air was palpable as the adventurers prepared for the fight. Eric Stonefist stepped forward, his battle axe ready. "You're going to regret this," he growled, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Lyra Windrider notched an arrow, her keen eyes focusing on the ruffians. "Let's make this quick. We need to find Alara." The battle erupted with a clash of steel and the crackle of magic. Ira Moonshadow unleashed a burst of fire, driving back several of the ruffians. Boren Ironheart channeled divine energy to heal any wounds and bolster his allies, his prayers echoing through the cavern. Thorn Blackwood darted around the perimeter, his daggers flashing as he struck from the shadows. He quickly incapacitated several of the ruffians, his quick reflexes proving invaluable in the chaotic melee. As the fight raged on, the leader of the ruffians chanted a spell, summoning a swirling vortex of dark energy. The magic whirled around him, enhancing his strength and making him a formidable opponent. Lyra, with her sharp eyes, spotted the source of the magic, the ritual circle inscribed on the cavern floor. "That circle must be powering his spells," she shouted. "We need to disrupt it." With her guidance, Eric and Thorn made their way to the circle, fighting off any ruffians that tried to intercept them. Eric swung his axe, clearing a path, while Thorn used his agility to slip past and reach the circle. As Thorn examined the circle, he noticed that it was inscribed with runes that seemed to pulse with dark energy. This is going to take some time to disrupt, he said, working quickly to scratch out the runes. Meanwhile, Ira and Boren continued to hold their ground against the remaining ruffians. Ira used her magic to protect her allies and dismantle any remaining threats, while Boren's healing spells kept everyone in fighting shape. With the leader's dark magic intensifying, the adventurers felt the pressure mounting. Lyra took aim and fired a precise shot at the leader, hoping to disrupt his focus. Her arrow struck true, but the leader's dark aura absorbed some of the impact. Finally, Thorn managed to disrupt the ritual circle, the dark energy dissipating with a burst of light. The leader let out a cry of frustration as his magic faltered, leaving him vulnerable. With the leader's power weakened, the adventurers rallied for a final push. Eric and Lyra closed in, their combined might overwhelming the remaining ruffians. The leader, now desperate and cornered, tried to flee, but Thorn's quick reflexes and Ira's magic prevented his escape. In the aftermath of the battle, the cavern fell silent, the ruffians either incapacitated or fleeing. The adventurers took a moment to catch their breath, their eyes scanning the cavern for any additional clues. Ira approached the table covered with maps and notes. "These documents might give us some insight into what's happening here," she said, examining them closely. Boren joined her, his eyes widening as he read through the notes. It looks like they were planning to use Alara in some sort of dark ritual. This could be part of a larger scheme. Lyra, still on alert, spotted a hidden door partially obscured by a pile of crates. "We should check that door. It might lead us closer to where Alara is being held." With the hidden door revealed, the adventurers proceeded through a narrow passageway, their path illuminated by Ira's magic. The air grew colder and the passage steeper, leading them deeper into the underground complex. The passage eventually opened into another chamber, this one filled with eerie, flickering lights and strange symbols on the walls. In the center of the room was a large, ornate cage, and inside, they could see Alara, bound and unconscious but alive. Thorn stepped forward, examining the cage's lock. "This shouldn't be too hard to pick," he said, his nimble fingers working on the lock. As Thorn unlocked the cage, Eric stood guard, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of further danger. Ira began to prepare a healing spell to tend to Alara's injuries. The cage door creaked open, and Thorn carefully helped Alara out, lifting her gently. "We've got her," he said, relief evident in his voice. With Alara safe, the adventurers began to make their way back to the surface, their mission far from over but a crucial step completed. They knew that the threat was not yet fully vanquished, and they would need to unravel the full extent of the dark plot they had stumbled upon. Chapter 4: The Ruins. The adventurers, with Alara in tow, emerged from the underground complex and made their way back through the forest. The night had fully descended, and the moon cast a silver glow over the path. Ira Moonshadow's light orb provided the only illumination as they navigated the dense foliage. Alara stirred and slowly regained consciousness, her eyes fluttering open as she looked around in confusion. Where am I?" she murmured weakly. Boren Ironheart gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. We're taking you back to the village." Alara looked at the group with gratitude and concern. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." They mentioned something about a greater danger, a powerful mage. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "A mage? That would explain the dark magic we encountered." As they made their way back to Willowbrook, the adventurers discussed their next steps. The discovery of the ritual circle and the mage's involvement pointed to a larger and more dangerous plot. They needed to gather more information and prepare for whatever awaited them. With dawn approaching, the party arrived back at the village. The villagers greeted them with relief and joy as Alara was safely returned. The village healer quickly took over, tending to Alara's injuries and ensuring her recovery. The village elder, a wise old woman named Marin, approached the adventurers with a solemn expression. "You've done a great service to our village," she said. "But the threat is not over. We've heard rumors of a dark mage operating in the nearby ruins. They are said to be conducting dangerous rituals that could bring calamity to our land." Eric frowned, his concern evident. Where can we find these ruins? Marin pointed to a range of mountains to the north. The ruins lie deep within those mountains, hidden from view. Many have ventured there, but few have returned. Ira took out the maps they had found in the cavern and began to study them. These maps might show the way, she said. But we need to be cautious. If the mage is as powerful as we suspect, we'll need to be prepared for anything. The adventurers spent the day gathering supplies and information. They spoke with villagers, learned about the terrain, and made sure they were equipped for the journey ahead. As evening approached, they set out toward the mountains, determined to confront the mage and put an end to the dark plots. The journey through the mountains was arduous, with treacherous paths and rocky terrain. The adventurers relied on Lyra's tracking skills and Thorn's scouting to navigate the way. The weather turned colder as they ascended, and the landscape became more rugged. After several hours of climbing, they arrived at the base of an ancient, crumbling fortress partially hidden by the mountainside. The ruins were overgrown with vegetation, and the once grand structure now appeared foreboding and ominous. Lyra led the way, her eyes scanning for any signs of traps or hidden dangers. We should approach carefully, she advised. These ruins could be heavily guarded. The group made their way through the entrance, the darkness of the fortress enveloping them. The interior was a maze of broken walls and decaying architecture, with the occasional flicker of torchlight revealing ancient inscriptions on the walls. As they explored the ruins, they came across a series of chambers and hallways, each more dilapidated than the last. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old stone. The adventurers remained on high alert, knowing that the mage could be hiding anywhere. In one of the chambers, they discovered a set of stairs leading further down into the depths of the fortress. The stairs were steep and narrow, and the group descended cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a large underground chamber. The walls were adorned with more dark runes, and the center of the room held a large, ornate altar covered with strange symbols and ritualistic tools. Suddenly, a cold, eerie voice echoed through the chamber. "So, you've come to challenge me." The voice belonged to a tall figure draped in dark robes, standing at the far end of the chamber. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his presence exuded an aura of malevolent power. The mage raised his hand, and dark energy crackled around him, forming a barrier that blocked their path. "You're too late. My ritual is nearly complete, and soon I will unleash chaos upon this land." The adventurers readied themselves for the confrontation, their weapons and spells prepared for the battle ahead. They knew that the fate of the village, and possibly much more, depended on their success in stopping the mage's dark plans. Chapter 5: The Dark Confrontation. The underground chamber pulsed with an ominous energy as the dark mage stood before the adventurers, his hands raised in a display of power. The air around him crackled with dark magic, and the runes on the walls seemed to pulse in response to his presence. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the weight of the impending battle pressing down on everyone in the room. Eric Stonefist stepped forward, his battle axe gleaming in the dim light. "Your dark magic ends here," he declared, his voice steady despite the menacing power radiating from the mage. The dark mage sneered, his eyes glowing with malevolent intent. "You fools have no idea what you're up against. My power is beyond your comprehension. This ritual will bring forth an ancient force that will consume this land." Ira Moonshadow, her fingers tingling with arcane energy, stepped forward beside Eric. "We've stopped your kind before," she said, her voice calm but determined. "You won't succeed." The mage's laugh echoed through the chamber, cold and mocking. "You're too late. The ritual is already in motion. Soon, the ancient power I've summoned will awaken, and you will be nothing but ash and bones." Lyra Windrider, her bow at the ready, scanned the room, her keen eyes picking out details in the mage's ritual setup. "We need to disrupt his spell," she said to the others. "If we can break the connection between him and the ritual, we might have a chance." Thorn Blackwood nodded, his daggers gleaming in the low light. "Then let's get to work. Eric, keep him busy. Ira, see if you can counter his magic." Boren and I will take out any magical focal points around the room. The group sprang into action. Eric charged forward, his battle axe swinging in a wide arc as he aimed for the mage. The dark mage quickly raised a shield of dark energy, deflecting the blow, but the force of Eric's attack pushed him back. Ira began weaving a counterspell, her hands moving in intricate patterns as she focused on unraveling the dark magic that filled the room. The runes on the walls flickered as her magic began to clash with the mage's, sparks flying as the two forces collided. Thorn darted around the room, his sharp eyes spotting several glowing crystals embedded in the walls. He recognized them as the sources of the mage's power, amplifying his spells and sustaining the ritual. With swift, precise movements, he began disabling them, using his daggers to shatter the crystals and disrupt the flow of magic. Boren Ironheart stood at the center of the room, his mace held high as he chanted a prayer to his deity. A radiant light enveloped him, spreading outwards and pushing back the darkness that permeated the chamber. The holy energy clashed with the dark magic, weakening the mage's control over the ritual. The dark mage, realizing his hold on the ritual was slipping, lashed out with a blast of dark energy. The force of the attack sent Eric stumbling back, but he quickly recovered, his resolve unshaken. "You'll have to do better than that," Eric shouted as he lunged forward, his battle axe glowing with a faint golden light as Boren's holy energy infused it. The mage hissed in anger, his focus split between maintaining the ritual and fending off the adventurers. "You cannot stop me," he roared, his voice echoing with unnatural power. He began chanting in an ancient, guttural language, the runes on the walls flaring up with renewed intensity. Ira recognized the language as the final incantation of the ritual, the last step before the ancient force was fully summoned. She intensified her counterspell, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought to disrupt the mage's magic. Thorn managed to disable the last of the magical crystals, causing the runes to flicker and dim. The dark energy in the room began to waver, and the mage's hold on the ritual weakened further. Boren's radiant light grew stronger, filling the chamber with a warm, comforting glow that pushed back the encroaching darkness. With the ritual on the brink of collapse, Eric seized the opportunity. He charged at the mage with all his might, his battle axe swinging in a powerful arc. The dark mage, distracted by the faltering ritual, was caught off guard. Eric's axe struck true, shattering the dark shield and cleaving into the mage's side. The mage let out a scream of pain and fury as his power faltered. Ira's counterspell surged forward, unraveling the remaining threads of dark magic and breaking the ritual's hold. The runes on the walls faded completely, and the oppressive energy in the room dissipated. With the ritual undone, the mage staggered back, blood seeping from his wounds. "This isn't over," he rasped, his voice filled with venom. "You've merely delayed the inevitable." Before the mage could finish his threat, Lyra loosed an arrow that struck him square in the chest. The dark mage collapsed to the ground, his body lifeless and his dark magic extinguished. The adventurers stood in the now quiet chamber, catching their breath and assessing the situation. They had stopped the ritual and defeated the dark mage, but the ominous words of their fallen foe lingered in their minds. Boren approached the mage's body, muttering a prayer for the dead. "Let's hope we've truly ended this threat," he said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and caution. Ira nodded, her eyes scanning the room for any lingering traces of dark magic. "We need to destroy any remaining artifacts or items tied to the ritual. We can't risk anyone else trying to continue his work." The adventurers set about dismantling the ritual site, ensuring that no remnants of the dark magic remained. Once the task was done, they gathered their gear and prepared to leave the ruins. As they made their way back to the surface, the weight of what they had accomplished began to settle in. They had saved Willowbrook from a terrible fate, but they knew that this victory might only be the beginning of a larger struggle against dark forces. Chapter 6: The Return to Willowbrook. The journey back to Willowbrook was marked by a sense of both triumph and unease. The adventurers had stopped the dark ritual and defeated the mage, but the ominous words he had spoken before his death lingered in their minds. The dense forest around them seemed quieter than usual, the tension of the battle still hanging in the air. Elara, now fully conscious and recovering from her ordeal, walked alongside the group. Though she was grateful for her rescue, she couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was still at play. "Thank you for saving me," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "But I fear that the mage's threat wasn't just empty words. There's more to this than we realize." Eric Stonefist, ever the pragmatist, grunted in agreement. "We took out the mage, but if there's more to this, we'll deal with it. We've handled worse." Lyra Windrider, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings as they walked, added, "The village needs to be prepared. Whatever the mage was planning, it might not be over. We should warn them and make sure everyone's on guard." As the party approached the village, the sun began to rise, casting a warm golden light over the landscape. The sight of Willowbrook coming into view brought a sense of relief, but also a reminder of the responsibility they bore. The villagers had put their trust in them, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Marin, the village elder, was waiting for them at the entrance to the village, her expression a mix of concern and hope. "You've returned," she said, her voice filled with relief. "And Elara is safe. But I can see from your faces that the danger isn't fully past, is it?" Ira Moonshadow stepped forward, her tone serious. "We stopped the ritual and defeated the mage, but he warned us that something worse might be coming. We can't be sure what it is, but the village needs to be prepared." Marin nodded, her eyes narrowing in thought. "We'll do what we can. The villagers trust you, and they'll heed your warning. What do you suggest we do?" Eric, always ready with a plan, spoke up. "We need to fortify the village. Build defenses, set up patrols, and keep a close watch on the forest. If there are more of the mage's followers out there, we need to be ready." Lyra added, "And we should gather more information. There might be clues in the ruins we missed, or someone in the village who knows more about this dark magic. Anything that can help us understand what we're up against." Thorn Blackwood, who had been silent for most of the journey back, finally spoke. "I'll take care of scouting the area. If there's any sign of danger, I'll find it." Marin looked at each of them in turn, her expression resolute. "We'll do as you suggest. I'll gather the villagers and start organizing the defenses. Please, if you find anything else, let us know immediately." The adventurers spent the rest of the day helping the villagers prepare. Eric oversaw the construction of barricades and defensive structures, his experience in battle proving invaluable. Lyra organized patrols and trained the villagers in basic combat, ensuring they would be ready to defend themselves if needed. Ira and Boren focused on gathering information. They pored over the documents and maps they had found in the ruins, searching for any clues that might reveal the mage's larger plan. They also spoke with the village's elders and those who had knowledge of the region's history, hoping to uncover anything that might explain the dark magic they had encountered. As the day wore on, a sense of urgency grew among the adventurers. The mage's threat still loomed large in their minds, and the more they learned, the more they realized how little they truly knew about the dangers they faced. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village settled into an uneasy calm, the adventurers gathered in the village square. Marin joined them, along with several other key figures in the village. "We've done what we can to prepare," Marin said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But we need to know, what do you plan to do next?" Eric exchanged a glance with his companions before responding. "We're going back to the ruins. There might be something we missed, something that can help us figure out what's coming. We can't leave anything to chance." Lyra nodded in agreement. "If there's more danger out there, we need to face it head-on. We'll keep the village safe, no matter what it takes." The resolve in the group was clear. They had faced countless dangers before, but this felt different, more personal, more dire. The Dark Mage's death might have been a victory, but it was clear that their journey was far from over. As the night deepened and the village settled into an uneasy sleep, the adventurers prepared to return to the ruins. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but they were determined to uncover the truth and protect Willowbrook from whatever dark forces might still be lurking in the shadows. Chapter 7: A Deeper Darkness. The following morning, the adventurers set out for the ruins once more, determined to uncover any remaining secrets and prepare for whatever might come next. The villagers' trust and safety rested on their shoulders, and they wouldn't leave any stone unturned. The journey back to the mountains was silent, each member of the party lost in their thoughts, bracing themselves for what they might find. As they reached the entrance of the ruins, the once foreboding structure now appeared even more sinister. The shadows seemed to cling to the ancient walls, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Thorn Blackwood, ever the cautious rogue, moved ahead, scouting the entrance for traps or signs of any recent activity. "It's quiet," Thorn murmured as he rejoined the group. "Too quiet. But there's something. I can't put my finger on it, but it feels like we're being watched." Ira Moonshadow nodded, her senses alert to the arcane energies that still lingered in the air. "There's a residue of dark magic here, stronger than before. We need to be on our guard." Eric Stonefist tightened his grip on his battle-axe, his eyes scanning the darkness within the ruins. "Let's move. Whatever's in there, we'll face it together." The adventurers entered the ruins, the familiar musty scent of decay and old stone greeting them. The torchlight flickered on the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced as they moved deeper into the fortress. Despite having cleared out much of the dark magic during their previous visit, the ruins still felt alive with an unsettling energy. As they explored further, they came across a previously hidden passageway. It was narrow and steep, leading further down into the depths of the fortress. The walls were lined with strange, glowing runes, different from the ones they had encountered before, older, more sinister. "These runes," Ira whispered, studying them closely. "They're ancient, older than anything we've seen. This isn't just dark magic. It's something more, something primal." Boran Ironheart, his eyes narrowing as he inspected the runes, agreed. These were meant to contain something powerful. Whatever the mage was doing, he was tapping into a force that's been locked away for centuries. Lyra Windrider looked down the passage, her instincts telling her that danger lay ahead. "We have to be careful. If the mage was trying to unleash this power, there could be traps or guardians still protecting it." The group descended the passageway, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The air grew colder as they went deeper, and the glow of the runes seemed to intensify, as if feeding off the energy within the ruins. At the end of the passage, they entered a vast underground chamber, larger than any they had seen before. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness, and the walls were covered with intricate carvings depicting scenes of ancient battles, rituals, and the worship of a colossal, shadowy figure. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone altar, its surface etched with the same runes that lined the passageway. Atop the altar was a large, black crystal, pulsing with a malevolent energy. The crystal seemed to draw in the darkness around it, absorbing the light from their torches and casting the chamber in a dim, eerie glow. "This must be it," Ira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is what the mage was trying to harness. This crystal, it's a conduit for an ancient power." Thorn moved cautiously around the altar, his eyes sharp for any signs of danger. "If we destroy it, we might be able to stop whatever he was planning." But as he approached the altar, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The runes on the walls flared to life, and the carvings seemed to shift, the shadowy figure depicted in them coming to life, its form twisting and turning as if it were awakening from a long slumber. Suddenly, the darkness in the chamber coalesced into a towering figure, a shadowy, ethereal being with glowing red eyes and an aura of pure malevolence. It stood before them, its presence overwhelming, and the air grew thick with a palpable sense of dread. "You have disturbed the Ancient One," the figure intoned, its voice echoing through the chamber like a chorus of whispers. "The power you seek to destroy is beyond your comprehension. It has slumbered for eons, and now it awakens to claim what is rightfully its own." Eric stepped forward, undaunted by the creature's presence. "We don't care what you are or what you want. We're here to stop you, and we won't back down." The shadowy figure laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Foolish mortals. You think you can stand against the power of the void? You will be consumed, just as the mage before you was consumed. With those words, the figure raised its hand, and the chamber was suddenly filled with a swarm of dark, shadowy creatures, manifestations of the void's power, each one writhing and twisting as they descended upon the adventurers. The battle was fierce and chaotic. The adventurers fought with everything they had, their weapons and spells flashing in the darkness as they struck down the shadowy creatures. But for every one they destroyed, more seemed to rise from the void, their numbers seemingly endless. Ira called upon her magic, weaving powerful spells to protect her companions and strike at the heart of the void's power. Boren chanted prayers of protection, his holy light cutting through the darkness and pushing back the encroaching shadows. Lyra fired arrow after arrow, each shot finding its mark in the swarming mass of creatures, while Thorn darted around the battlefield, his daggers flashing as he struck at the shadow's weak points. Eric, his battle-axe glowing with a fierce light, charged at the shadowy figure, determined to end the threat once and for all. With a mighty swing, he brought his axe down on the creature, but it passed through the figure's ethereal form, scattering the darkness but not destroying it. The shadowy figure laughed again, its voice filled with dark amusement. "You cannot defeat me with mere steel, mortal. I am the void, and I will consume you all." But Ira, her eyes locked on the pulsing crystal atop the altar, realized what they needed to do. "The crystal," she shouted to the others. "It's the source of its power. We have to destroy it." With a renewed sense of purpose, the adventurers turned their focus to the crystal. Ira began chanting an incantation, her hands glowing with arcane energy as she prepared a spell powerful enough to shatter the conduit of the void's power. Boren, sensing the urgency, raised his mace and called upon the divine light of his deity, channeling it into the crystal. The radiant energy clashed with the dark power within, causing the crystal to pulse and crack. Lyra and Thorn kept the shadowy creatures at bay, buying Ira and Boren the time they needed to complete their task. The void's power surged in response, the darkness around them intensifying as the shadowy figures tried to stop them. But Eric, with a roar of defiance, raised his battle-axe high and brought it down on the crystal with all his strength. The combined power of the adventurers, Ira's magic, Boren's divine light, and Eric's mighty blow, finally shattered the crystal. The moment the crystal broke, the shadowy figure let out a scream of rage and pain, its form dissipating into nothingness as the void's power was cut off. The chamber was suddenly filled with blinding light as the darkness was banished, and the runes on the walls faded to nothing. The adventurers stood in the now empty chamber, breathing heavily but victorious. The threat of the void had been vanquished, and the ancient power it sought to unleash had been sealed once more. "We did it," Ira said, her voice filled with relief. "The village is safe." Eric nodded, his battle-axe still in hand. "But we need to make sure this place stays sealed. No one can ever come here again." Boren agreed, stepping forward to consecrate the ruins, ensuring that the void's power could never be awakened again. As he finished, the chamber seemed to settle, the ancient danger finally laid to rest. Exhausted but triumphant, the adventurers made their way back to the surface. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting the world in a soft, golden light. The nightmare was over, and the village of Willowbrook was safe once more. Chapter 8: A Hero's Welcome. The adventurers returned to Willowbrook as the morning light bathed the village in a warm glow. The villagers, having spent the night in anxious anticipation, rushed out to greet them as they approached. Their faces were a mixture of relief, joy, and admiration. Word had spread quickly that the adventurers had faced a great evil and emerged victorious. Marin, the village elder, stepped forward to meet them, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've saved us all from a terrible fate. We are in your debt." Eric Stonefist, ever humble despite his imposing presence, shook his head. "We did what we had to. The threat was real, and we couldn't let it endanger anyone. But the villagers' courage in preparing for the worst was just as important." Lyra Windrider smiled warmly at the gathered villagers. "Your strength and resolve kept us going. Knowing you were depending on us made all the difference." Ira Moonshadow stepped forward, her expression serious yet gentle. "The dark power has been sealed away, but we must remain vigilant. The ruins must never be disturbed again. We've done our best to ensure that the void's influence is gone, but it's up to you to protect the future. Borin Ironheart, with his typical calm wisdom, nodded in agreement. This village is under the protection of the divine now, but remember that vigilance is a part of that protection. Keep watch over your lands, and never let darkness take root here again. The villagers listened intently, understanding the weight of the words. They knew that their safety had been bought with great effort and sacrifice, and they were determined to honor the adventurer's warnings. Marin then motioned for a young girl to step forward. She held a woven garland of flowers, symbolizing the village's gratitude. "Please, accept this as a small token of our thanks," Marin said. "You've given us back our peace, and for that, we are forever grateful." Thorn Blackwood, who was usually reserved and distant, accepted the garland on behalf of the group. He gave a rare smile, touched by the gesture. "We're just glad we could help. It's not every day we get a welcome like this." The villagers erupted in cheers, celebrating their heroes with heartfelt joy. The air was filled with laughter and music as the villagers began to prepare a feast in honor of their saviors. The adventurers were ushered to the village square, where tables were being set with an abundance of food and drink. As the festivities began, the mood was light and jubilant. The adventurers, though weary from their battles, found themselves relaxing for the first time in days. They shared stories of their journey, each tale met with awe and admiration from the villagers. Eric, who usually preferred the quiet of the wilderness, found himself enjoying the company of the villagers, exchanging tales of past adventures and battles. Lyra entertained the children with stories of her travels, their eyes wide with wonder as she described the various creatures she had encountered. Ira and Borin spent time with the village's elders, discussing ways to keep the village safe and secure in the future. They offered advice on how to maintain the fortifications and how to use simple protective charms to ward off evil. Thorn, who was usually content to remain in the background, found himself at ease among the villagers, sharing a rare drink with some of the village hunters. He was pleased to see the village thriving, knowing that their efforts had made a real difference. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, the festivities reached their peak. Music filled the air, and the villagers danced and sang, celebrating the victory over the darkness. The adventurers joined in, their spirits lifted by the warmth and gratitude of the people they had saved. But even amidst the celebration, they remained aware of the responsibility that still weighed on them. The threat had been neutralized, but they knew that their journey as protectors of the realm was far from over. Darkness could rise again, and they would need to be ready to face it. As the night wore on, Marin approached the group once more, a solemn expression on her face. "You've given us a great gift," she said softly. "But I know that your journey isn't over. The world still needs heroes like you. If ever you need a safe haven, Willowbrook will always welcome you." Eric nodded, his face serious but warm. "We appreciate that, Marin. We'll always remember this place, and we'll do everything we can to keep it safe." The group exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They had faced many challenges together, and they knew that more would come. But for now, they would savor this moment of peace and happiness, knowing that they had made a difference in the lives of the people they had sworn to protect. As the village of Willowbrook celebrated late into the night, the adventurers stood together, their bond stronger than ever. They were heroes, not just because of their deeds, but because of the hearts they had touched and the lives they had saved. Chapter 9: Shadows of the Past. The morning after the celebration, the adventurers prepared to leave Willowbrook. The villagers, grateful for their help, offered provisions and well wishes as the group readied their horses. Though the village was safe for now, the adventurers knew their work was far from done. Dark forces still lingered in the world, and their journey would continue. Before they could depart, Marin, the village elder, approached them with a concerned expression. "Before you go, there is something else you should know. Last night, after the feast, one of the villagers came to me with a troubling tale." Ira Moonshadow stepped forward, her keen eyes narrowing. "What kind of tale?" Marin hesitated, glancing around to make sure they were alone. An old man, one of our village's elders, claimed to have seen strange figures in the woods several nights ago, before Alara was taken. He thought they were just a figment of his imagination, but now, after everything that's happened, I'm not so sure. Eric Stonefist's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his battle axe. What kind of figures? He described them as cloaked in shadow, moving silently through the trees, Marin explained. He said they watched the village from afar, then vanished without a trace. It's possible they were connected to the mage, or maybe they were something else entirely. Thorn Blackwood, ever the vigilant rogue, exchanged a glance with Lyra Windrider. I don't like the sound of that. If there's something else out there, we should find out what it is. Lyra nodded in agreement, her instincts telling her that this was a thread they couldn't ignore. We can't leave until we've investigated. If these figures are a new threat, we need to stop them before they cause more harm. The group agreed to delay their departure and investigate the mysterious figures. The villagers, though concerned, were reassured by the adventurers' decision to stay a bit longer and ensure the village's safety. They set off into the woods, following the directions provided by Marin. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the forest floor, but the sense of unease hung heavy in the air. The woods, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now felt tainted by the recent events. Thorn led the way, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement. The others followed closely, their senses heightened, ready for anything. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they began to notice subtle signs that something was amiss. The birds were unusually quiet, and the usual sounds of the forest seemed muted, as if the very land was holding its breath. The further they went, the more the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Eventually, they came to a small clearing, where the ground was disturbed, as if several figures had gathered there recently. Thorn knelt to examine the tracks, his brow furrowed in concentration. There were at least 3 of them, he said quietly. They were here not long ago. Their tracks lead further into the woods, toward the old burial grounds. Ira's expression darkened. The burial grounds. Those are sacred. If these figures are desecrating them, it could mean trouble for more than just Willowbrook. Eric gripped his axe tightly, his jaw set. Then we'll stop them. Let's move. The group followed the tracks deeper into the woods, the path becoming more treacherous as they approached the burial grounds. The ancient site was a place of reverence, where the ancestors of the region's people had been laid to rest for generations. It was said that the spirits of the dead watched over the living from there, and the very thought of it being desecrated filled the adventurers with a sense of righteous anger. As they neared the burial grounds, the air grew colder, and the sense of foreboding intensified. The once vibrant forest now felt like a place of death and decay. The trees here were twisted and gnarled, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to the sky. Finally, they reached the burial grounds, a place marked by ancient stones and overgrown graves. The ground was cold and hard, the silence oppressive. And there, in the center of the grounds, stood the figures Marin had spoken of, 3 cloaked individuals, their faces hidden in shadow, performing some kind of ritual over a newly disturbed grave. Ira's eyes widened as she recognized the symbols they were using. Necromancy, she whispered. They're trying to raise the dead. Eric's anger flared. Not on our watch. He drew his axe, ready to charge into battle. But before he could act, Lyra placed a hand on his arm. Wait. We need to be smart about this. If we attack now, they might complete the ritual, and we'll be facing more than just them. Thorn nodded, his voice low. We need to disrupt the ritual first. Take them out before they realize we're here. The group quickly formulated a plan. Ira would use her magic to create a distraction, drawing the necromancer's attention away from the ritual. Thorn and Lyra would use the distraction to move in silently and take out the necromancers one by one. Eric and Boren would be ready to charge in if the situation escalated. Ira began to chant softly, her hands glowing with arcane energy. She focused on the air around the necromancers, causing a sudden gust of wind to whip through the burial grounds, scattering leaves and debris. The necromancers looked up in surprise, their focus broken. In that moment, Thorn and Lyra sprang into action, moving like shadows through the trees. Thorn was the first to strike, his dagger flashing as he took down one of the necromancers with a swift, silent blow. Lyra's arrows found their mark on the second, who fell before he could even react. The third necromancer, realizing they were under attack, tried to complete the ritual in desperation, but Ira was ready. She unleashed a bolt of energy that shattered the dark symbols they had drawn, breaking the spell before it could be finished. Eric and Boren charged in, their weapons at the ready. The remaining necromancer, seeing his comrades fall and his ritual disrupted, attempted to flee, but Eric was faster. With a powerful swing of his axe, he ended the necromancer's life before he could escape. The burial grounds fell silent once more, the threat neutralized. The adventurers stood among the fallen, their breaths heavy from the exertion. Ira stepped forward, her expression grim as she examined the ruined ritual site. They were trying to raise someone, from this grave. We need to find out who it was. Boren knelt by the disturbed grave, his expression somber. It's an old grave, one of the first settlers in this region. Whatever they were trying to raise, it would have been powerful, dangerous. Lyra scanned the surrounding area, her eyes sharp for any other signs of danger. We need to seal this site. Make sure no one can use it for dark magic again. Eric nodded, his voice resolute. Let's do it. We can't leave this place vulnerable to whatever dark forces might still be out there. The group set to work, using their combined skills to cleanse the burial grounds of any remaining dark magic. Ira and Boren led the efforts, weaving spells of protection and consecration to ensure that the dead would remain at rest. As they finished, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the burial grounds began to feel like a place of peace once more. The adventurers knew they had prevented a great evil from being unleashed, but the encounter left them with a sense of unease. The necromancers were just a symptom of a larger problem. Dark forces were stirring in the world, and their work was far from done. As they made their way back to Willowbrook, the adventurers knew that they had taken another step in their journey. The shadows of the past had been confronted, but new challenges awaited them. They had faced death and darkness, but they would continue to fight, standing as the last line of defense against the evils that threatened their world. Chapter 10: The Road Ahead. The adventurers returned to Willowbrook with heavy hearts, knowing they had thwarted a dangerous plot but uncertain about the larger forces at play. The villagers greeted them with relief, but the group could sense the undercurrent of fear that still lingered in the air. Marin met them at the edge of the village, her expression a mix of gratitude and concern. "You've done more for us than we could ever repay," she said softly. "But I can see that this is not the end." Eric Stonefist nodded solemnly. "No, it's not. The necromancers we faced were only part of something bigger. Their attempt to raise the dead points to a deeper evil at work. We've stopped them here, but we don't know how many more might be out there, or what their ultimate goal is." Ira Moonshadow added, "We've cleansed the burial grounds and sealed them against further intrusion, but the fact that such an attempt was made at all suggests that the world is more vulnerable to dark magic than we realized." Lyra Windrider, always keen to look to the future, spoke up. "We need to track down the source of this evil. These necromancers didn't act alone, someone or something is guiding them. We can't rest until we've found out who, or what, is behind this." Boren Ironheart placed a reassuring hand on Marin's shoulder. "We'll continue our journey, Marin. But know that if you ever need us again, we'll return. Willowbrook is under our protection, and we won't let darkness take root here." Thorn Blackwood, ever the realist, added, "This is just one battle in a much larger war. We've bought the village some time, but there's a storm brewing out there, and we'll need to be ready for it." Marin nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll be vigilant, and we'll keep the village safe. But I hope that you find the answers you're looking for, and that you can put an end to whatever darkness is rising." With that, the adventurers prepared to leave Willowbrook once more. The villagers gathered to see them off, offering words of thanks and gifts of food and supplies for the road. Though their hearts were heavy with the knowledge of the challenges ahead, the group knew that they had made a difference here, and that was enough to keep them going. As they left the village behind and ventured back into the wilderness, the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The encounters they had faced in Willowbrook had only deepened their resolve to seek out and confront the forces of darkness that threatened the land. They traveled in silence for a while, each of them lost in their thoughts. Eric's mind was filled with the memories of past battles, and he wondered how many more they would face before their journey was over. Lyra thought of the people they had saved, and the countless others who might be in danger if they failed. Ira considered the ancient magics they had encountered, and what it might mean for the balance of power in the world. Boren prayed silently, asking for guidance and strength in the days to come. Thorn, ever watchful, scanned the horizon, alert for any sign of danger. As they walked, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. The air grew cooler, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The group found a suitable spot to make camp for the night, setting up their tents and lighting a small fire to ward off the chill. As they sat around the fire, eating their evening meal, they finally began to speak of what lay ahead. "We need to find out who was behind the necromancers," Ira said, breaking the silence. "They were trying to raise something, or someone, of great power. If they succeed elsewhere, it could spell disaster for more than just Willowbrook." Lyra nodded in agreement. "We've heard whispers of dark cults in other parts of the realm, and rumors of strange happenings in distant lands. We should head to the nearest large city and see what information we can gather. There might be clues to help us track down the source of this evil." Eric took a deep breath, his eyes focused on the flames. "Whatever we find, we need to be ready for anything. We've faced necromancers, dark magic, and who knows what else. But we've always come out on top because we work together. That's how we'll get through this, by sticking together and watching each other's backs." Boren, ever the wise cleric, added, "and by having faith. Not just in the gods, but in each other. We've been through a lot, and there's more to come. But as long as we keep our purpose clear and our hearts strong, we'll find a way to overcome whatever challenges lie ahead." Thorn smirked, his tone lightening the mood. "And by being smarter than the other guy. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that a good plan can get you out of a lot of trouble. Let's make sure we stay one step ahead of whatever's coming." With their spirits lifted, the group settled in for the night, taking turns keeping watch as the others slept. The fire crackled softly, and the sounds of the night filled the air, a reminder that, despite the darkness they had faced, life went on. As dawn broke, the adventurers packed up their camp and resumed their journey. The road ahead was uncertain, but they knew that they would face it together. The shadows of the past had been confronted, and now they marched forward, determined to uncover the truth and bring light to the darkest corners of the world. The adventure was far from over, but as long as they had each other, they knew they could face whatever lay ahead.